Calling to order the Charlotte Select Board meeting February 25th, 6 o'clock. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Wanted to add a appeal of a zoning board decision by Carrera on a variance, and they've appealed, so asking whether the select board wants to enter an appearance.
Okay, so why don't we see if we get ahead of schedule?
Okay.
We'll do that as we get into it.
Yep.
Since that was only allowed for 1 minute. Public comment. Yes, Peter.
Yeah, I want to just give you an update. The Planning Commission meeting this past Thursday, we had two site sketch plans that were closed. The first one was the continuance of the proposed subdivision for the Charlotte Health Center, which they're proposing to go between the Children's Center and the firehouse. And the other one was for the library. And during those discussions, one thing that came up for both was the issue of parking. And I think it's a bit of it's a challenge, I guess, for the library, because it looks like reduce the amount of spaces they currently have. And I know there was some discussion, I think the select board had, or some members of the select board, about potentially adding parking way back at an initial discussion, I think maybe with Ben Mason, but it had to do with the medical center. So I wanted you to consider, giving that serious consideration, just because the timing, I think, is right. And it seems like there could be, I don't know, maybe there might be some financial benefit to maybe trying to glom on with what may be happening across the street. I don't know, but only to say it's an issue. The senior center, I think, it's an issue with parking over there, and that might be a good time to really take a hard look at it.
For our part of it, that was one of the reasons of our participation, mine, but I went to several of those earlier meetings, I think you went to one, to have parking. The most logical one was to the east of the fire station. And I don't know where the building is now. Is the building going to be toward the road, or is the building going to be set back, the health facility?
Well, what they're proposing right now is that it be on the street between the firehouse and the...
So there's a lot of space behind.
Potentially, yeah.
And depending how it's negotiated.
Yeah.
But I mean, we looked at, I think, 20 or more spaces back there, just as a concept. No votes or anything.
I spoke up at the planning meeting and said that we had talked over the years about a number of things. One was expanding street parking along Ferry Road. Another was, of course, the stuff behind the fire department, and then again contemplating behind the town hall. And that we had talked a couple of times about trying to get somebody's input on a comprehensive parking plan. But I think the last time that came up, we had a quote, wasn't it, from...
The match requirement was pretty high.
It was kind of steep, and we decided not to go for it. But I don't think that problem's going to go away.
Right, well, what stemmed this parking to start with was parking for the senior center.
Yes.
To start with, not saying it wouldn't be parking for the whole, all the municipal buildings, but that's what stemmed it originally.
Well, if one reads the town plan the way I do, we want to encourage stuff to happen here. And there's any number of lots that would be reuse of existing buildings that aren't going to have parking.
Right.
So as the plan goes, I mean, if you want to invite people to develop in your town center and you don't have toilets and you don't have parking, you don't have much to offer.
The proposal also includes sidewalks, which I think kind of goes hand in hand with it. You know,
I mean,
and I don't know how much of the acreage back there is zoned village commercial, but there's a fair amount of it is.
Yes.
Yes, because, well, it's gotta be because, I mean, they were originally gonna go behind the children's center. So there's at least a few acres back there.
So I wanted to bring that.
Yeah, interesting. I think maybe sidewalks get looked at again, because you do have the children's center, health center, library, you're gonna have to have,
Yeah,
A crosswalk.
crosswalks, gonna probably have to have
yeah.
more of a lighting system or something. Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Other towns frequently have a municipal parking area. I mean, there's small towns all over Vermont that, when you use the old buildings, there's just no place to park, so the town has to come up with something.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Anything else, public comment? Opening of bids to replace the westerly section of fence around the Barber Hill Cemetery, West Burying Ground. So I have 3 bids here. So what we do is we open them, we read them, but don't make a decision until it's
Right.
evaluated by you folks and the conditions. Gallop Brook Fencing, Enosburg Falls, Vermont. So there's several options. Labor materials, flat top design. 1 drive gate, $14,038.75. Flat top design, 2 drive gates, $14,782.30. And then it calls for a pressed spear design. The 1 gate is the same as the 1 gate of the flat top design, $14,038.75. And then pressed spear design, 2 drive gates, same price as the other one with 2 drive gates, $14,782. You guys want to take a look at that? Vermont Recreational Surfacing and Fence Incorporated, Barnett, Vermont. Wow, pretty close. So same breakout. Wow. This one, flat top design, 1 drive gate, $14,264. Flat top design, 2 drive gates, $15,179. Pressed spear design, 1 drive gate, $14,264, same as the flat top design. And then the press spear design, 2 drive gate, $15,179. So that's pretty close, a teeny bit higher. If you want to see it. This is from Middlebury Fence Company. Flat top design, 1 drive gate, $14,122. Flat top design, 2 drive gates, 14,700. Press spear design, 1 drive gate, 14,122. Press spear design, 2 drive gates, 14,700. So it's kind of right at your budget, isn't it? And it appears,
It's almost identical to what they submitted almost 2 years ago, which is.
so the lowest by just a few dollars is the Gallup Brook fencing.
encouraging.
So you guys,
It's amazing, those are all really right in there. That's a tiny spread for any kind of bid work.
why don't they all buy from the same suppliers or something?
Probably.
So you evaluate and
Yeah,
come back at the next meeting and select board makes a decision, I believe.
and you scan those electronically and, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yep, no further comments on that? Public hearing for proposed amendment to the town plan related to the energy use, generation, and siting. If I remember, your name is Emily, right? Ah, having a daughter named Emily, that's easy. So you want to summarize how we're going to approach this, Dean?
Yep. So this is the Select Board's first hearing on the proposed amendment. The Planning Commission and the Energy Committee and Emily and Daryl did a lot of work on bringing this to this stage. They're to be thanked and commended, and the Regional Planning Commission has evaluated the proposed plan using standards that the state created for an enhanced energy plan, which allows the town plan to be given substantial deference in Section 248 proceedings, which are basically utility projects that are reviewed by the Public Utility Commission, and having an enhanced energy plan allows the town plan to have greater weight. So Emily is going to go through those standards and probably 15 or 20 minutes or so, and then we could take questions. I reviewed it and I had some possible suggestions which we can go through afterwards if you'd like, or we can take other questions or comments, however you want to proceed.
So, Emily, is this similar to what you did when you were here a couple of weeks ago, or?
It's relatively similar. When I was last here, I really focused my presentation on energy planning in general and what the state's requirements are. Now, what I'm planning to do with this document that I believe you all have in your packets is to go through specifically the ways that the draft Charlotte plan as proposed meets the requirements. So
Okay.
it's a little bit more focused on the town.
Should we have something open here, or is it a PowerPoint type thing?
This is the standards that this is a document that all town plans are going to be
Okay.
compared against. So these are the standards that were developed. Who developed the standards?
Sorry, they've been developed by the Department of Public Service, and they've been in place since early 2017. All right, so yeah, the first standard on page 3 here is just that we can't officially give this determination until the plan has been adopted by the town. So once that happens, we'll be able to move forward with that.
So this will go through the select board's hearing, then you have a second hearing, and then you put it to a town vote. So as we said, there's not enough time to put this on the town meeting ballot, so the select board would have to decide to put it on a ballot at some point during the year. If they don't put it on by the date that the planning commission's final hearing was, then it's considered not accepted by the town. The final hearing was in November. I'm forgetting the date right now, but
November of 2018.
2018.
So we have we'd have to have a special meeting, maybe during the November primary,
Yep,
which there isn't one yet,
right, during that.
or earlier if there's another event.
I think originally our goal was town meeting, but then we realized that wasn't going to happen, and our hope was that we could get it in time for the budget vote, which is
April 9th.
April 9th, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So the next standard is, again, just basics, whether it has an energy element at all. It certainly does. And then we can move to the
So you're
next one.
commenting about what we've done in our draft as
Yes.
it compares to what the public service essentially laid out.
Yeah, so what this document will show is that in the view of CCRPC staff, the draft plan that you have in front of you does meet all of the requirements that the state has put out. So I can go through all of them, or I can answer specific questions, whatever is the most helpful.
Well, I think as you're summarizing now is good, I think.
Sure.
Just tell me where to stop, or for the next one.
Yeah, as soon as this one is all the way up. Great. So one of the major things that energy plans have to have, which we discussed the last time I was here, is looking at the amount of energy that the municipality is using now, where that energy is coming from, what it's being used for, and then looking at how the town's energy use can change by 2050 to meet this goal of 90% renewable energy by 2050, which is the, one of the most major goals that's underlying state energy planning in general. So this goes through all of the data analysis that's included in the town plan. As I discussed at the last meeting that I attended with you all, this is coming from the LEAP model, the Long Range Energy Alternatives Program that the Vermont Energy Investment Company, VEIC, runs. And so we have this at Chittenden County's level, and then we have broken it out to each municipality based on various factors. And then there also is a section of requirements that talks about whether you have action items that show how the municipality is going to move from the energy use that you have now to the 2050 goals, and also to move towards the generation goals that are set in the town plan. So these need to cover a variety of subjects: conservation, efficiency, decreasing fossil fuels. And so you'll see there's a number of policies and strategies that meet those discussed on this page, and then we can go to the next page. Talks about whether the municipality is leading in terms of investigating ways to be more efficient in its own buildings. It talks about whether there's other approaches. So CCRPC staff have noted here that you have some updates to your outdoor lighting standards for greater energy efficiency. And then also a requirement to talk about reducing transportation energy demand and moving towards renewable fuel options for transportation. So these are actions that are between both your energy section of your plan and your transportation section. As we talked last time, the biggest change that the LEAP model is showing for this is a very large increase in electric vehicle use. The next section is whether the town is planning for land use patterns that are going to be reducing energy use, keeping energy energy use low. So this is this is covered by the work that you do both to increase your density in your village center, and also to keep development out of your areas of high public value, your natural areas in your countryside. It also, talking about wastewater and potable water supply is a very major component of this. All right. And then it gets to the question of whether you have policies about developing and siting renewable energy resources. So these are the policies that would receive substantial deference if your plan was adopted with these suggested changes and it did get a determination of energy compliance from CCRPC. So to do that, you need to make sure that there are policies in the plan that would then be applied to renewable energy facilities that are being proposed in Charlotte. So there are a number of policies that were already existing in the plan when the Energy Committee and the Planning Commission started working on this. They've been refined to make sure that it's clear, A, that they are applying to all development, including renewable energy. That's something that wasn't as clear in the draft as it had previously been adopted. It also incorporates some of the language that the Public Utilities Commission is using to talk about different natural resources. So talking about things not only as areas of high public value, but as either known constraints where all development is inappropriate or possible constraints where development may be allowed but would need to have some sort of condition placed on it. So it attempts to incorporate those language pieces into what you already have as your policies. It also, excuse me, and it also sets generation targets for the municipality, and I'm happy to go into more detail later if it's useful about how those have been developed at the state level, the county level, and then broken down to the municipal level as well. Yeah, and the mapping standards are a series of things that need to be mapped as part of this planning process. It includes generation that already exists, areas that might be potential candidates for generation in the future, things that are natural resources that, again, are either known constraints or possible constraints that wouldn't or might not be appropriate for development, and then also areas that would be considered preferred sites for renewable energy generation.
Could you just touch on at this point?
Yeah.
Did there are certain types of preferred sites that are kind of indicated, like the existing landfills or former landfills or gravel and sand pits?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are, in the Vermont net metering rules, there are a number of what are referred to as preferred sites defined. What this does is it's an attempt by the state to make sure that to really incentivize net metering generation on sites that have already been impacted in some way. So it defines rooftops or parking lots or other places that have already been developed as automatic preferred sites. And then also there's sand and gravel pits, landfills, things like that have already had a previous land use impacting those areas. There's also two different ways that the municipalities can be involved in defining additional preferred sites. One of them is to define specific sites in the town plan. That means that those sites are considered preferred sites and receive the same benefits as this other list from the state. There also is then a joint letter process that a municipality can undertake at the request of the property owner, where the Planning Commission, the Select Board, and the Regional Planning Commission are then able to all evaluate the site, determine that it's appropriate for a preferred site, and then grant that after the fact. It's not related to the plan.
The joint letter might be between town plans, like we don't want to amend, we have this town plan in place, and then a landowner says, well, what about my property? And we don't want to re-amend the town plan, so we go through the letter amendment process.
Right, and it can be either, a third-party property owner, or we've also seen this process at the regional level with town-owned property as well.
So that on the top of the screen now those are the statewide preferred locations, such as rooftops, parking lots, previously developed sites, brownfields, gravel pits, quarries, and Superfund sites.
Right. And this is something where, there's potentially you had some suggestions for changes. So what's reflected here might not be what ends up being in.
Yeah. That's sort of the baseline. I mean, are those required to be preferred sites, or these are examples of preferred sites?
Those are all required to be. Those are all automatically designated as preferred sites, so the town can't say that they're not preferred sites.
Okay. Is number 13 next? Is that where we are?
Yeah. So number 13, as we discussed, is mapping the constraints on energy generation. So your areas of high public value are mapped throughout your town plan. They're broken up into different maps. So water resources versus ag soils on different maps, for example. And then there also are constraints that are defined by the state of Vermont. Those are included, they're listed in the plan, they're included on the maps as well. Yeah, and this one was not relevant. You worked with the Regional Planning Commission to create the maps, so that last question.
That's it. Any questions so far?
So would 14 be a yes?
14 would be not applicable because you are using maps that were developed with the region.
So that's municipality seeking a determination of energy compliance from the municipality and not using, so we are, if anything, it would be a no, right? I mean, but not applicable, NA?
Yeah, I think there is a page 16 that has an NA box on here that was cut off. So I think that would be
Okay.
how it would be checked.
This question is Susie Hodgson. This is about the potential
Just pass the
for... This is the potential for solar on parking areas, which is generally considered preferred. We don't have a lot of large parking areas in Charlotte, but we do have parking areas at the senior center, we have it at the town hall, there are a couple other areas. And I may not be reading the map correctly, but it doesn't look like either of those are labeled as potential sites. And what I found particularly striking is that we're not only, the state is not only incentivizing sites for preferred solar, they're also disincentivizing sites that we do not label as preferred. And that made me think we should look more carefully at how little we have in preferred areas. Because if you're not in a preferred area, you're almost penalized. And so I would just like to add, is that okay if I add what that is? So just so people know, because I've just, thanks Emily, I asked her, or asked Dean about the race. Is that worth adding now about what the difference is?
Hey, are you talking about map 14 now, or are you talking about something? Or?
I'm talking about the race. You're both incentivized on preferred sites, but you're also disincentivized on other sites. And I just think it's worth adding to the record here. So
are you suggesting that the map should reflect the preferred sites then?
I'm just wondering about that. We have to be very careful with the label we use for preferred sites because it relates specifically to financial incentives on a kilowatt basis, more so than I thought in looking at the regs. And in other words, you will get an adder that is worth 4 cents more if you're on a preferred site. So what that did is made me look back at the map and say, how many areas are considered preferred? So because you have a real advantage financially.
So we should increase those if things have been left out.
My question is, we may want to consider the language we use, so then when we have something that has, in the possible constraint area, which is quite large, some of those areas may only have one possible constraint, some have 5. We may want to consider the language that we use so all those, there's a huge area, are not, are still able to possibly get those incentives.
So we can go to the map. It sounds like that's kind of where you want to go right now. We
don't have to go to the map, but what I didn't realize is that there's both the financial incentive and the disincentive, and it's a difference of 4 cents, which is quite significant. So, for example, if you look at the map and you're lucky and you want to develop solar and you're on a red parcel, you will get that incentive. And we only have a couple tiny little red dots, some of which correspond with property owners. You may be next door in an area where it's not clear that you should be disadvantaged, and you actually are financially disadvantaged by not being a preferred site.
Okay, so Susie, so I will go to the map. Okay. First, I just want to ask about I hadn't heard about a disincentive before, so is that new? I've heard about an incentive for being on a preferred site.
Yeah, I can read it, but I think I need 2 hands to find the page. So let me give that back. I don't want to take too much time, I can copy and paste. Okay. So here we go. So you're a site, and if you want to develop solar, and you're on a preferred site, which is the red dots on our map. We don't have very many of those. You will get an incentive of 1 cent per kilowatt hour, and this is in the category what I call community solar, between 15 kilowatt and 150 kilowatts. So we're not talking about large solar like the 2 megawatt that Clark Hinsdale has. Now, so in that in between category. But if you're on a site that is not located on a preferred site, it's a negative, it's minus 3 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's a 4-cent difference. So that's a disincentive versus an incentive. And the other important
Can I just ask where you're reading that from?
and this is from the state regs. And the other thing is the positive siting adjusters for a 10-year period, which is considered the financial horizon for these projects, even though we know they last longer. But the negative siting adjustment, so that negative 3 cents per kilowatt hour, applies in perpetuity. So that's a much, I didn't know, I mean, unfortunately I didn't read this till this afternoon, thanks to Emily referring me to page 39 out of 60 pages. I mean, you have to dig into the weeds to get there. And all of a sudden it occurred to me, we have all this potential in Charlotte, yellow, but unless we call it, whatever we need to call it, none of those people can get that preferred rate unless they go through the process that Emily mentioned, the letter, you know, the 3-part letter. So
That
it
is
made me
true.
think about how, it's not changing maps, because the maps are great, but it's maybe how we label things, because I'd hate to think we were missing out on these incentives, because we know the incentives right now are being curtailed, and if anything, we want to ramp up incentives. So that's my one take-home message, which is...
And I do just want to clarify one thing, that one of the other preferred sites is areas where at least 50% of the electricity will be used on site. So that does potentially increase some of those if it's specifically home-based, but everything else you're saying is correct. So thank you.
So maybe it would be best to go to the maps and maybe go through a few of them first so that you can see what the information that's there, and then we can come back and look at each one specifically. So the energy maps are basically start at map 14. Everything else prior to 14 is the same as the plan that was adopted last year. So map 14 is existing renewable energy generation sites and preferred sites, which is what we've been talking about. This is the map that was in the plan as proposed by the Planning Commission. The yellow dots are existing solar sites. There are some wind sites. And then up in the upper right, there's some sand and gravel pits and the closed landfill. I was going to go through to the next, okay. So I actually asked Regional Planning in the next map to revise this to show existing systems broken out by size. So there are ground-mounted systems as squares. You'll see the one system that we've talked about, it's over 2 megawatts, is in the Heinsberg Road there, and the smaller ones that are 15 kW, slightly larger, are 100. Yeah, Legend is over here, but screwing it up. Let's see. Maybe just zoom in.
Push your laptop?
Oh.
Okay, thanks.
So here's an example where the pointer is. Like these are 15 kW, that's probably 150 kW. And then the stars, these are roof-mounted systems, and it's a little bit misleading, I would say. The size of the symbol increases more than the actual kilowatts. So those are really between 15 kW and 80 kW. So
all roof-mounted stars?
yeah, all the roof-mounted are stars. So there's a few large ones, but those are really just 80 kW. It's not like Fritz has, I think, one, another one over here. So I guess anyway, we can get back to that. The pink spots are going to be more clear when if I go to map 15 and 16, which show prime wind and prime solar. But basically, those are areas that are both prime wind and prime solar. So let me go to map 15, which shows so this is, the yellow is called base solar, and that's solar potential in the presence of state and or local possible constraints. And then the reddish color is prime solar, and those are solar potential that are free from constraints.
Can I just ask just a point of
Yeah.
clarification? So if you have one possible constraint, you could end up in the yellow category, right? So if you're a farmer and you have some land that may be prime ag land, but you still want to develop solar on part of your property, you'll be in the yellow category, right?
I guess that's a question.
Sure, so the yellow on here is representing areas that our GIS analysis, the source that we have for solar potential is showing that there would be some possibility of solar development, and as we had a chance to discuss, it's a relatively rough data set. It's the best that we have available, but we're fully aware that there may be some areas that are not represented here that could be great for solar and vice versa. And so that is overlaid with the map showing constraints. So, for example, in this example, just south of Ferry Road near the lake, this could, in theory, be an area where the mapping of prime ag soils stops, and that's what the difference between the yellow and red
So it could
is.
be, so yellow, so it could be one constraint or it could be 5 or a number of constraints.
Yes.
So there wouldn't be a distinction.
There's no distinction.
And can I just ask you to comment on
Please.
that, just that scorecard that Colchester does for an implementation? The point I'm trying to make is we're making a big division between red and yellow that has big implications in terms of financial incentives and disincentives. And I think there's an area in between red and yellow that we would also like to be able to get the rates for those people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just, I don't know what the best time is to talk about it. I mean, it may be more an implementation thing, but
Let's go through with maps, then come
Okay,
back to that.
we'll come back to that.
Let me just ask,
Yellow include rooftop?
The yellow
it's not
The
necessarily.
yellow is not taking out impervious surfaces, just be in the mapping, but certainly things that are on a rooftop but in a yellow area would be considered a preferred site and would not be affected by this.
But there are paved areas in the yellow set currently, so the town parking lot, the senior center, that,
Right, and those would still be considered preferred sites. They would not be affected
The
by
yellow
this.
just says possible constraint.
Right.
That's all it says.
Does that take it out of the positive incentive category?
It
Needs further work.
It does not, based on the net metering rules. It may, depending on some of the suggestions, I think that that Dean has for policies of the town plan.
Just one more question, and where does the data come from for the?
Right, the data come from 2 different sources. The solar data is from VCGI, Vermont Center for Geographic Information, and the wind potential data is from a group out of Massachusetts. We have full documentation on the data sources that I'm happy to send you if you'd like.
Is that noted on the maps in the metadata source?
Sorry, I just changed from solar to wind, so a similar thing, there's base wind and base solar. Let me just go down to the,
You should cite it. Yeah.
sorry, I'm gonna go down to wind energy potential by
see, it
CCRPC and
doesn't-
DPS.
Oh, yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it's just sorting our work, so we certainly could add more sources if that's helpful.
I think it might be at this early stage where we're all learning.
So this map, similar as the solar map, this is wind and has prime wind and base wind, which, again, prime wind is wind potential that's free from state or local constraints, and base wind is wind potential in the presence of constraints. Just going to move on to map 17. These are the state known constraints. So these are all listed in the standards that we
They're
went through.
listed in the standards, and they also are listed in the town plan. These are areas that the state would review during any proposed renewable energy or any proposed energy facility project.
Okay. And then map. Map 18 are state possible constraints, and that includes a layer, the pink layer is protected land which is owned by the state or private conservation land. So one change I asked regional planning to make is to include our layer. They had some of our conserved lands, but not all of our conserved lands. So they did make a change, which we can go through, that has all our conserved lands and open space areas. So you'll see, I mean, this map shows why there's so few prime areas. If the prime means that they don't have local constraints, which are only the white spots on this map.
To clarify, state or local.
State or local. So if we go back to map,
Why such an abundance of protected is agriculture?
it's because we've worked very hard to protect land, and that's,
Conserved land?
some of it's conserved land.
Okay.
Well, some is not.
Some is not,
Some
some are,
conserved land, we put solar panels.
It's either protected or it's got natural features that don't want to have a piece of hardware on it. But I think that map also does not depict, it shows the white areas where you can go build things, but it doesn't really depict where there's lots of roofs and you can put things on there. You know, current hard stuff where you can stick a panel up. So that's just showing the bare open land that is suitable for an installation.
Well, we should also remember from the last discussion that this really should be put in context with, I forget what the number was, but the amount of, I think it was acres that Emily had projected Charlotte would need to get to reach the state goals. I don't remember what it was, but
actually,
it
there,
wasn't
yeah. There's a,
48. Yeah, 48 acres.
48 acres total.
Pretty small.
Minimum, and 104 to reach the high goal. So it's a spread of 48 to 100. Oh, sorry.
let me just respond to Peter's, and then we'll go to yours, Frank. So that was a point that that I asked about, as far as in the plan it says, here's the goal, but how do we get there? And so Emily did a little breakout with examples of how we could get there. Do you want to walk us? Is that?
Sure, so, excuse me. There is, as I said, a municipal generation goal for each of our municipalities. We've set this in our regional plan. It's been approved by the Department of Public Service. And it sets both low and high annual generation targets that each municipality will be working towards by 2050. So the high target of additional annual generation for Charlotte by 2050 is 16,031 megawatt hours. And Dean had asked me to come up with just an example of how to meet the target. Obviously, there are infinite ways that it could be met, but I included some pictures of different types of generation facilities and talked about just a possible combination of numbers of them that would be needed. And so hopefully this may be helpful.
Up left is a 2 megawatt system, which is similar to the size in East Charlotte. This, I think, is that spot right there. That's 500 kilowatts. This is 150 kilowatts. That's 180 roof mounted. And this system on Shelburne Farms is 18 kilowatts.
Yep.
So there's a mix.
Right, so for one possible example, this would get you a little bit over the high generation target. You could have, for example, 2 of those largest ones, 4 of the large net meterings, 11 small net metering, 10 large rooftop systems on barns or other commercial buildings, and then 300 additional rooftop systems of 15 kilowatts. So that's just one example of how the goal could be met.
And again, I think as Peter's point is, that's really a small percentage of total acreage in town. It's pretty attainable, really. I mean, that's, so Frank, was your question to show both prime solar and prime wind?
Well, I'm looking at the map here on 18, and it's got the pink areas, and are those, it says land and private conservation. Does that mean that nothing can be built on them?
Probably, yes.
And
Although, I mean, they could, for example,
I mean, they may
if
have
it's a Vermont land
existing,
trust
they may have
easement-
existing, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, say if it's a town open space agreement, they could ask the town if it's okay to put a system, in an area, provided it doesn't impede the use of the open space that was intended, and the town could say no, so I would say generally, it's restricted from development for any use, whether it's residential, commercial, or energy. Not to say they can't ask, but it's likely to be
I'm just
protected.
trying to I'm just wondering if we can find a way to merge map 18 and map 14 in some way, shape, or form, so we can see where the preferred sites are
Yeah.
compared to
So map
protected land.
Right, so the white areas on this map are what's colored on map 14 in this map. Well, it includes what's colored. So the pink areas, let me zoom in. The pink areas are prime wind and prime solar, which is the absence of constraints, and areas that are determined by VCGI in their analysis to be capable of generating solar and wind. Again, to a level of, a certain level of error. So there is a note on this map that I asked to be added. We have not reviewed these sites at a site-specific level, and there may be a potential for preferred sites that aren't symbolized. For example, it goes both ways. I mean, we haven't figured out all the wetlands in town. There could be wetlands that aren't shown that, would perhaps make some of the prime sites not prime. And also, there could be areas that have generation potential that we haven't actually determined.
So can I ask a quick question on that? Frank's comment about merging the maps. Do the red spots, pink spots indicate the white spaces on the other map? So they are merged, Frank, in a bit of a way, in that the pink shows the white spots on the other map. Does that help?
Not all of them, does it?
Okay.
Only if they have high generation potential.
So you have to still compare.
Is there a generation potential, difference of generation potential between prime and base, or is it just the presence of constraints?
It's just the presence of constraints. When we estimate how much generation potential there is on certain land, we do assume that it might take more land if it has constraints, just because it might need to be configured in such a way to avoid those constraints, but the generation of a single solar panel is no different based on whether it's on one constraint or another.
Okay.
So it would be helpful to see that map with pink on the right, if that's what we're hearing.
GIS is awesome. You just put together a map with what layer and that layer and that layer. You want to go to a study group and do some real work here. But the question really is, are these the maps we want in our town plan for now?
I'd just like to add that I think the operative phrase that when Dean read was site-specific, and I think that's really important to remember, and I think it's one of the challenges of having maps. That the limitation is that they're not that specific. So there very well could be areas that would be beneficial for solar or wind that are not designated on this map, and there may be others that are designated that are not. And without delineating every acre of land in Charlotte, I think it's a challenge. So I think we have to have a qualifier like that on the map that basically says that. I think it's unfortunate, based on what Susie's saying, that the financial incentive can be specific. I'm not quite sure how to solve that problem. I think we, the Planning Commission, thought of these maps as these are living documents, and they should change over time as we learn more about sites that are beneficial and others that may not be.
Yeah, Emily, can you mention that scorecard approach for that area in between? Because I'm just looking at when you see lots of pink dots close together, that's saying it's a preferred site. But what if you happen to be on that white space and not the pink dot? You know, could it be more of a blob? Because I found it problematic that some of the pink dots do align with property boundaries. And if I were someone sitting on that pink dot and got this 4-cent adder, and next to me, my neighbor's on the white dot, it's like, why is that pink dot? And some of them do align, so I just don't know if that, I mean, the maps are fantastic, but where there's a cluster of pink, whether there isn't any reason why that couldn't be one pink area, so it doesn't look like it aligns with property boundaries. Because that seems an unfair advantage if you're on one dot versus the other pink. But what Emily, and I'm putting you on the spot here, but the scorecard that Colchester is proposing, and that may be after this plan, implementation plan, but that seemed a good approach to kind of resolving some of this preferred versus non-preferred.
Yeah, thank you. So what Susie's referring to, she called me earlier today with a couple questions just about the data sources that are included in the maps, and had asked me whether I was aware of any work that's been done in other municipalities in Chittenden County on identifying preferred sites and how other places have gone about it. And so what I had said on the phone is that we did recently review the town of Colchester's proposed plan. So it's in a similar place. It's between select board public hearings currently, so relatively soon to be adopted, hopefully. And they have a bit of a different approach for identifying preferred sites, where rather than putting things on a map and identifying them that way, they have sort of a list of features that they're looking for or not looking for in a preferred site that then either each of them have a point associated with it, and it's a point value, and then the end point value either says that it's not a preferred site, or it sends it into a sort of a further review process, or it sort of is automatically designated as such. And I did, say on the phone, a couple caveats about that are that, the plan hasn't been adopted by the select board, so it is still in draft form. That could change, and also, we haven't seen it applied yet since it's not something. But I did mention that, and I think that's what you had wanted me to say.
Does that system then preclude having
Designated preferred areas on the map already? Or how does?
That is the goal of it. Again, I'm hesitant to say too much about it since we haven't seen it in action yet.
I guess the question that occurs to me is what's required as far as mapping goes? Is it required to have a preferred, how much information is needed? It seems like a good process, which is sort of matches almost our areas of high public value perhaps, but if we're required to have a map, it seems like it wouldn't meet that test, but maybe it has. Maybe there's a...
By required to have a map, do you mean to comply with the state's net metering rules and to have a preferred site designation that way?
Right.
So there isn't necessarily a need to have a map. Ideally, what you'll have in the end is through the process of someone applying for net metering, you'll be able to say that it has been designated by the town in the following way. So either in the town plan or in the letter, or in theory through this process that we've just discussed through that process.
What's the timing on the difference between the positive and the negative incentive in terms of if we adopt this map, that's it for the rest of the time, or if 6 months from now we adopt a new map that we said we found this preferred site? So is that a moving target? If we do that, find a preferred site that's not on this map in the future, do they get the 1 cent plus, or is this the only time we're allowed to put that on paper?
We go through the letter process that Emily described, is that correct?
Right, so you certainly can add additional preferred sites at any time, either through doing a joint letter with through the select board, the planning commission, and the regional planning commission, or potentially by amending your town plan if there were a batch of sites that you would want to add. in terms of the property getting additional financial benefits in their net metering rates by being on a preferred site, the question is whether it's designated as a preferred site at the time of their application for a new project. And as I'm sure you know, the net metering rules do change periodically, and the rates change.
So you wait to apply before you find out you're not preferred.
Or can they go hand in hand?
Well, it just
An
sounds like it says
application.
you don't know it's preferred until you've applied, so it might be too late.
The process that I'll just tell you the process that we've seen at the regional level where we've done these joint letters. We've had the town and the property owner approach us saying that they are wanting to put in an application. We go through the letter process, they have that letter in hand, and then they apply for their certificate of public good.
Who's the approval authority of the letter? Is that a-
Selectboard, Planning Commission, Regional Planning Commission, 3.
Oh, it's within the community, municipality. Oh, it doesn't have to go to the state or anything?
No, it does have to go to the Regional Planning Commission.
Or concurrence?
Right.
Okay. Oh, so that's locally approved.
Sort of. Sort of. Chittenden County is sort of local.
So, I guess this question, I think, on this map boils down to how much information you want on the map at this current time, not to say you can't amend it, or not to say you can't, Select Board, Planning Commission can't decide in the future that a property that's applying wouldn't be suitable, or, it is suitable, or is preferred. So I guess that will be, I think, a question that,
Because these are planning maps, I support whoever said that, was it you, Susie, to graphically display these, and with not such tight, bright lines, to show them as more general. I'm just a layperson spouting off here, but because these are planning maps, that seems awfully explicit, those kinds of delineations up there. That it may be like not appropriate.
Well, some of them aren't accurate to start with, like the big star for my solar system's about a half a mile from where they show it on the map, so.
Yeah, they're planning maps.
Yeah, I'm not sure about, I hear what you're saying, Marty, I'm not
Yeah.
sure that's the total answer, just
Okay.
because I think you
Make it a little more diffuse, you're still gonna run into these areas where somebody's gonna be there and somebody's not. It seems to me that, again, these are starting points, and I think a lot of it has to be in the language, in terms of how it's described, how we arrived at this. The process, that there is a process that it can be added to the map. So I think, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just thinking, but the shape, for instance, if you have a circle,
Yeah.
you can tell that isn't unlikely to align with property boundaries. Because when you have the square and you look at it and think, well, that aligns with this person's property boundaries, it's not aligned with that. So just the actual shape would make a difference. Yeah, I mean,
to say this isn't the exact,
yeah, like you're not in it.
prime
you're
spot, but it's in the
perfect.
vicinity.
You get 4
Yeah.
kilowatt hours you go. And
Yeah.
with a circle, that gives it more room for interpretation, which I think is useful.
I'm not opposed to a circle with a square, I still think you come to the same point, so I think more of it is the language that describes
you
what
could
these
say,
mean.
something like vicinity of prime
Yeah.
spot, maybe not that exact language, but.
Well, the typical planning disclaimer that's made would just be popped on those maps.
Right. So it sounds like there's some consensus for showing the prime spots, but not as depicted in this map, but more generalized. Is that,
Defer to RBC, because, just hear the message here and they can decide.
well, it's our map, it's your map.
I know that they're,
It has to be approved.
they're guiding us on this and they have
Yeah.
more depth of knowledge. than we do.
Okay.
I think
Alright.
putting it, I think it's really important that it's put in the context with the options of going through the process of making maybe a not preferred site a preferred site through the select board, through the planning commission, and through regional. So I think that, coupled with as clear as we can get a description in terms of, yeah, there are squares or there are circles, but it doesn't necessarily mean that if you're outside of that area, it's not going to happen. I think it's, because I think we're always going to be confronted with that. regardless of the shape or whether it's diffuse. I think
So if
it's
I can ask-
understanding that it's flexible.
If I can ask a clarifying question, does that mean that the policy that you would put in the plan would be that any development, any proposed renewable energy development that is not impacting your known constraints, your specific subset of areas of high public value would automatically be considered a preferred site? Is that the policy that would be supporting that?
Or would there be a
I'm
list
not sure about that.
Or would there be a list of requirements that would have to be answered to make it available to be preferred? Instead of just
Possibly, I mean,
one.
I think the maps that we have, right, which are preferred possible constraints and known constraints, I think that works fairly well.
It kind of asks for a site-specific resort end game without having done the site-specific work.
Right, and
And I don't know how you can do that. It kind of sounds like that's what we're being asked to do.
well, I agree with you. I think that's the challenge of it, and I think that's why it's the map and it's the language that goes with it that says these things. We know these things at the end of the day are very site specific, and you can't really, I don't think, put that on every square acre of.
The example is the second barn that I built up on my street. It has a 200 amp panel. It has a big flat roof. There's no shadows. It's the perfect angle for solar panels. But that's an ideal site, preferred site, but it's not identified on any of this stuff. So we need, I don't know if we have to do that. I mean, I guess that's a question to the Chittenden County. I mean, that's kind of what I was getting at. Is this the drop dead language for preferred site, or are we allowed to say, well, preferred site is the policy would include a site-specific review to determine whether or not it's preferred?
This is the, not so drop dead, but the way to map it, but if there's other ways to designate a preferred site through the letter process. If someone knows they want to develop a 150 kilowatt system, they would come to the town and say, I want to designate my land as a preferred site. Select Board Planning Commission, do you agree? If the answer is yes, then they go to regional planning. If they agree, then they got their letter.
I think there's a really good analogy here, and that's areas of high public value. We have maps that generally outline areas of high public value, but it really comes. But when we look at a subdivision, it's each subdivision is unique, and the areas of high public value that might be in that proposed subdivision vary quite a bit. Some may not be so important, others may, and I think in the same light, the same holds true with a proposed solar or wind installation.
Can we have Emily answer that? Rebecca has her hand up. Emily, do you want
Should I go first? Yeah. Okay. And just to clarify, including the areas that are designated as prime wind and prime solar as preferred sites on a map like this isn't required as part of the state determination standard. So I just want to clarify that.
Okay.
I just want to, it's a question for you, Emily. So jumping ahead, I mean, ultimately, it's not about approval or not approval, it's about actually knowing the information.
Right.
So is it totally insane to think about having somebody who could go through acre by acre and come up with an actual, real, valid, watertight assessment of our land and what is developable or not? Because actually, it's in part of our implementation table is to find out what are the preferred sites for this, and we've been tasked with doing that. And I'm wondering if you've ever seen any town do that, and how do you do it?
Sure. So I don't know that I would use the phrase totally insane, but it certainly would be a labor-intensive process. It would be ambitious. That is a good word for it. And I think that probably what some other people have said, relating it to the subdivision review process, for example, that the town would go through when a development is proposed, is probably more similar. So, that's a case where someone has a particular development site in mind, and then they're able to go to that site and look at exactly where, wetland boundaries are and where a forest block might end if those are resources you're protecting. So I think that in terms of your question of how the Energy Committee, for example, might go out and find specific areas that would be developable, I think that you probably would start at the other end and think of properties that you thought might be good fits, and then look at the resources that are on them. Because what we're providing on our maps is the best data that we have available, but we're fully aware that it's really hard to map all the natural resources for the county or for the state in a really exact way. So I'm sorry to be pessimistic, but just want to be honest.
I think the other thing to keep in mind too is the technology changes, so that if you were, I agree with you, Emily, in terms of the difficulty in doing it by acre on every acre of land, because it's hard to know whether it's preferred or not without knowing what exactly it is you want to put there. And then knowing that, again, the panels today are this big, in 15 years they might be this big, so it's a kind of a moving target.
One thing that has been mentioned earlier on, but perhaps gets lost as we're really digging into all the maps, of which is what the total requirements are for the town to hit its goals for renewable generation. There's 26,000 acres in Charlotte. We need 48.
Right.
48 acres out of 26,000. Just sort of think about that a minute. It's 0.2%. So.
But if nobody wants to see a big site, you're talking 300 small sites. So then the number gets bigger, rooftops.
So we need to probably wrap this up with our time.
Right.
We didn't get as far as I thought we were going to get, but is there an action we've taken based on this discussion?
I think we've made progress in terms of identifying closer to what should be on this map, and maybe it doesn't include the prime or prime wind or prime solar. I think this is the first hearing, and after the second hearing, the select board can't make any changes without holding a third hearing. So I'm wondering if you would want to continue this to, there are some additional issues that I guess I'd think warrant some feedback from the Energy Committee and the Select Board and Planning Commission. So I guess that's my suggestion, would be to continue it.
So this is, you're going to have, this is hearing one, you're going to have a 1+, because
Right.
we haven't even gone through your recommendation for the edits and the changes, and all that has to be done so that you have a clean
Right.
hearing, that there aren't no further changes.
Right.
So
My preference is I think it's useful to have Emily here, so I would know there's time in April when she's going to be away. I'm wondering if March 25th is a possibility. That's a month from today.
is that a regular schedule?
It's a regular scheduled meeting.
Probably, if that's,
It might have to possibly be at 6, depending upon what else is happening, but that's,
so that's a proposal, but I wanted to see if we could take away from this discussion, because I agree with you. 48 acres over whatever you said, 26,000 acres. You don't need an acre by acre description, but to me, it's more case by case. So you get a more general, and maybe the codes on the other map are square or they're stars. So maybe the yellow ones could, as you said, be circles. So it's not a defined area. And then ultimately, it's going to be, I think, a case by case when someone comes along, because technology is going to change. There's going to be a development. There's going to be change from A to B. So I was wondering if I could take away maybe make the map with perhaps the yellow indicator that's a little broader and less specific as a sort of a placeholder in the plan, and then as we move forward, it's case by case, a year from now or 2 years from now.
Right, so just to be clear, the map with the yellow, which is this one, the yellow is showing the existing systems which correlate to the squares and the stars on the other.
Well, I was thinking more like map 14. Map 14 is what had the pink.
Right.
And they're, as Marty or someone said, they have apparently property line, but if those were perhaps circles.
Rather than.
Yeah, then it makes it a little more flexible.
Okay.
I don't know if that's kind of what I took out of your discussion.
Seems
Take
like.
something and smudge the map, and they'll all,
Consider-
borders will all get fuzzy.
If it's possible,
There you go.
if it's possible to say possible prime wind and prime solar.
Likely
And then put the
prime.
Is that too
caveats in
general?
the heading.
We might need to discuss with.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the
Oh,
last question?
I think the idea, whether it's depiction or in the legend to say kind of this is possible prime wind or prime solar, it's not, this isn't the actual edge where someone has actually gone and measured it, but we think it's.
Right. We can certainly do that, and it's not uncommon for us to make fuzzy maps for people where we do have those exact kind of boundaries where they kind of fade in. So we could certainly provide a draft like that.
Good.
Maybe that's a takeaway then from the
Right.
maps.
Yeah.
And then we get in the text next time, as you suggested. Any other burning issues while we're wrapping up this first hearing?
March 25th, but that's when you initially scheduled the second hearing.
Thanks, wasn't it?
I do have that down. I think, so that would be a continuation of this hearing. Do you want to motion that? Just to,
Sure. Somebody want to make a motion to have
Motion
the,
to make March 25th the continuation of this hearing,
yes.
the first hearing.
Second.
Everybody in agreement? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
great, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Emily, for
Of course.
joining us.
No problem.
Well, that was fun.
Well, how are you doing? Good. So we're going to go into one of your sections. Is that a new section?
Lots of sections.
Well, a lot of them all said previously approved.
I know, isn't that lovely?
Yes.
You like seeing
I
that?
did, so now we only have,
This should be very minimal.
I see. Give people a second to,
I'm just gonna hand out these. Buzz through.
okay. So we have, you've got
How many?
half an hour.
Oh, I don't think
Oh, really? There'll be questions.
I had it all by pages.
I can do
Where
it.
we're going. And I thought
Have you changed areas that have been previously approved?
we put the
Down.
goals
Management.
together. In the route, if you go to the. So I put, it's in the
I'll let you
property.
drive.
This is the. It was approved.
So we're going to have this document, which is the plan, we're going to have this is the guide you're going to walk us through. Okay,
So there, if for
We'll
some
settle
reason
down
you
in a
want to
minute.
see something, all the exhibits are under.
This is what I'm talking about now. They're just not approved, they're red. So it's a combination, some are old and
some are brand new. But I'm gonna walk you right, I got
Why don't you just identify everything? So we're about to get started. We're on the 7:15 agenda item, Charlotte Park and Wildlife Refuge Management Plan update, and you'd like to see us approve this. So why don't you just
Does
tell us who's
everybody want
here?
to come up and sit with me?
We're here. Okay. Why don't you just go through your names again, just so I can remember everybody?
Hi, Andrew Milligan.
Okay.
Susan Smith?
Julian Kolsky.
Jesse
Okay.
Bradley.
Okay. Okay, why don't you, you're going to be the...
So,
mess-
we gave you a packet.
Yep.
And in the packet is, the way that we laid it out for you is as it would be a complete document after tonight if everything goes as planned. So what I did was I wrote, Fritz, you weren't here, but I handed out a sheet. And what I decided to do, because for ease, is go over the proposed sections that are awaiting your approval. So in the document, the new document, we're going to go to page 15 to start, which is in red.
Yep.
And in the old document, it's page 16. I know you guys probably don't have it, but if you have questions, I can refer to this document because I have it in front of me. One thing I wanted to say that's really exciting is that Andrew's been working on our website, and the new unapproved plan is on, and it's to even the exhibits, right? So all the exhibits and all the plan is on, as well as the old management plan, okay? So if you want to go read this lovely document, you can go on your computer and do that. Okay, so starting with the Trails and Farm Access Road. We renamed this, it was before two sections called Gravel Trails and Farm Access Road and the hiking trails were the two names. So we combined two sections that didn't seem to make sense for ease of flow of the document. We added a more detailed description of the trails in general and how they are to be used. So the new paragraph that's what the new paragraph is about. We listed the location of trail maps and signage, and we referenced Exhibit 8, which is the exhibit that talks about trail maps and signage and mowing. We then, that was the section title is called Trails and Farm Access. We did a subcategory, which I've put on this in italics, called Gravel Trails and Access Roads. So that is a description that matches pretty much the description in the old document. Goes in a little more detail, and it also mentions our continuing, ongoing consideration for developing access and parking for equestrian and people with disabilities, which was in the old one, but we've sort of just restated it. And we put in Exhibit 3, which is the right-of-way at the Varney Farm, which is hanging out there, but we felt it was important to mention it in this document.
Is there any plans on trying to figure out where that's going to be?
On the,
The access is clear, but the parking is not clear, is it?
Well,
I don't think so.
The access was kind of negotiated when the event barn was going, but the parking really wasn't.
Well, it's changed
really wasn't
ownership.
figured out, and now it's changed ownership, and I don't know what's gonna happen, because we'd have to talk to the new owner to try to figure out.
Well, we have talked to the new owner, But that is why we made it a very general thing in the plan, because there is no specific about it. But we put the actual Exhibit 3 is the actual deed right-of-way that was negotiated with the property. So that still exists, it's just not defined.
With Nordic Farms.
The one that we negotiated with Clark and Nordic Farms.
Were there defined parking, number of spaces and horse trailer? That was never defined?
No.
For horse trailers or parking?
No.
Well, no.
Not the location, just the,
No, when the event barn was trying to go in, basically they were trying to say that they could use the parking area that they were going to put in front of the house as long as they weren't going to have an event.
Yeah, no, it's definitely hanging out, but we put the legal document in.
That was where it ended.
okay.
So at some future date, if there is an opportunity, we have that legal in, it's not defined in this document. But we felt it was important to keep it in. So that's an outgo, something for the future. But we put a reference to it in this document in the hopes that we will someday have a right-of-way through that way. Okay, so then under management standards, what we did was we put a specific description of maintenance. The specific description of maintenance has been moved to under standards. So if you looked at the old document and the new one, it's just a little different. They had things in it that we were supposed to be raking the gravel trails. We took that out because that just wasn't practical. And we sort of simplified that the plan so that it reflected what we actually are able to do there, okay? And then we put under walking trails, we put the section again in italics on that is pretty much exactly very similar to the original, but we added a design statement and we referenced Exhibit 8 on mowing specifications. Otherwise, it's pretty much what was there before.
You said
Okay.
design standards. I think here it says management standards.
Under management standards, we put a little design statement. This is, under the description, we put bridges have been constructed to cross streams and bog bridges placed to protect fragile areas. So the trails were designed for walking, running. We added that line. So that's a change from the original. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same.
Jesse, Exhibit 8 includes both maps and the mowing specification?
It does.
Okay.
It does.
And Exhibit 7 is just pruning?
We could go through the exhibits, but this is the file for the exhibits.
Why don't we do what you're doing? I mean,
Okay, it's
we
fine.
don't have the
Yep.
exhibits
Fine.
in our...
No, because this is our exhibits. In a nutshell. A little daunting, this file, but they're in this file in the order that they're on, when we get there, Okay. So those are those two sections. Now, I don't know if you want to go through all the sections and then improve them. In the past, we've approved
I would go just to the sections that you've got in red that you've made changes to.
and then make the approval. You don't want to approve the section I just went over and then move to the next section?
I think maybe we can just do the whole document when you're done.
Okay.
That's what I would
All
say.
right. So now we're going to move on to the parking area, which is on page 18.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It used to be on page 25. And we felt that because it was part of the document, it used to be at the end of the document, and so we've moved it in to be part of this, closer to talking about the trails and things that we felt like it was more important to have it up close, it was more relevant. Okay, we combined the standards in the parking area for agriculture, recreation, and wildlife into one section. So the old way it was they had a management for wildlife, a management for recreation, and a management for agriculture. It just seemed redundant to say those things over and over again, so we made them all go under one. So now it looks like this. as you're looking at it, instead of like this. So that was the biggest change we did. Do you understand that change? Okay. And then we added to it, at the time when this document was made, there was no kiosk, so we added maintenance for the kiosk. And we also referenced the ash trees, because as you probably know, the ash trees are threatened, and we felt that when we are in the situation where we have to start treating the ash trees to preserve them, that in the parking area might be a place that we might prioritize as preserve, because it will cost money to maintain, to keep them.
So how you could, that's a good question. So the tree warden wants to preserve some and take some down. So
Right.
there's going to be a process in the park of
That's right.
preserving.
That's right.
So
Kind of
you'll
a-
evaluate on which ones to preserve and which ones
Right.
can go.
And we put in the parking area we felt was an important place to, so
Preserve those.
we put it in the document, that it was someplace that we considered a priority. Okay? And then the next area is the Velco, which is on page 30. So you could go all the way to page 30, guys. Isn't that nice? And the Velco line did not exist when the park was built. And we felt, because we have a negotiation with Velco about treating it and how that area is managed by the transmission line is managed, that we felt like we should add a section specific to the transmission corridor. So that is a whole new section.
So they're above ground there, right?
Right.
Whereas just it was in the Ferry Road where it went underground.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. All right, and the next section that we added, which is a new section, is the Thorpe Barn. And we really felt that as the only architectural structure beside the kiosk and the bridges, it was important that it had its own section to convey the historical significance of the building and to ensure its preservation and maintenance over time. So Jenny wrote up a really nice, I think it was you, wasn't it, Jenny, that wrote up a little historical piece of it and what happened, the history of it before the park and since it's been part of the park. And we wrote also that, which was in the original document, we put in this section about the barn shall be repaired and maintained as needed to keep blah, blah, blah. And that line used to be in a different area in the management plan, and we pulled it out and put it specifically under the Thorpe Barn. Okay?
Is there ever I remember a conversation, I'm not sure with whom, with respect to the use of the Thorpe Barn for anything? Or is it just supposed to remain unused?
No, in the original document, it was consistent with the barn should be used consistent with the park's philosophy. So it was a hope. I mean, the history of it is that Demeter was actually at one point thinking that they would help us restore it, but people in town at the time didn't want the financial responsibility of maintaining the barn. So the funding for the stabilization of it, I guess they did stabilize, some stabilization.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of work done with the first committee that came together, raised money, and they stabilized the foundation. And they were envisioning using it to be a place to display agriculture in this area, implements and the history of agriculture in this area. So that was one. Used for storage. We put things in there. Things are stored in there, but it needs work.
So that we put, it is a goal that the Thorpe Barn be restored and used in a way consistent with natural, agricultural, recreational, historic values of the Charlotte Park, which was what was in the original document. Okay, now, really interesting, this next section, the operating budget, and I can't remember what we were thinking when we wrote the original document, because I was on it, but we put a budget down. So the original operating section called operating budget, we actually assigned numbers to.
What was the date when you did that?
97,
1997?
98.
Okay.
Yeah, so needless to say, a lot of things have changed. And so what we decided as a committee was to make it a much more generic operating budget, which is basically to say the maintenance of Charlotte Park and Wildlife Refuge is the responsibility of the town of Charlotte, and the annual budget will include funding for ongoing maintenance of the parkland, trail, infrastructure, and Thorpe Barn. And then we also added that there are no costs associated with agriculture on leased land. So in other words, we felt it was important in this document to say that we as a town shouldn't be responsible for things that happen, financially responsible for things that happen on the leased land.
Right, so then you come in annually for your park maintenance.
Right.
And so I'm just looking here. So the maintenance that you have in the budget for this year is $16,650, and that's a...
You want to know how much it was this year? In these years? In this year, we wrote it. We've done pretty well over the years. Anyway, I think it was like $6,000 in 97, so we haven't done too badly. Good. Anyway, so that's the operating budget. And then the last piece of paper, which isn't in red, is the index of our exhibits, which is really just a table of contents of the exhibits.
Was that fat folder right there?
Right, this folder, which is also these exhibits are on the website. So you could look at the end of this and say, okay, exhibit 8, you can go to the different exhibits, and they've been scanned in and put on the website.
So I have a question, an overriding question. So do you have do you look at this every other year, every 5 years? So we're going to update this today, and you've been going through it for a couple of years getting it updated.
How many years? 97.
So that's the first time, should there be something in here that says that it's to be reviewed by the committee every some period of time, 4 years, 5 years?
Well,
because conditions change.
It's taken us, well, to answer your question, after 10 years, I think in 2007, a group of people wrote a management plan, and after spending 2 years, it was completely tabled because it was too controversial at the time to do it. So our goal in doing this management plan, that we would make it as general as possible, and then use our exhibits as our flexibility and on implementation of the plan. Does that make sense? Does that kind of answer your question?
Well, what I'm saying is, do you think there should be in the overview that this plan will be reviewed by the committee every 5 years? Or something, so like on our town plan, we have to review that every 5 years to meet standards of the state, and this is obviously within our community, but it's just a reference.
About every 15 years.
You'd rather do it every 15 years? It's too much work.
If you want to write it down. It's a really interesting question, because the group of us that worked on this have been part of, I've been part of this plan since the Demeter was negotiating with the town. And so in my mind, and I can only speak for myself, I tried to make, we really tried hard to make it
generic.
As generic as we could. We were really specific when we did it then. We put a budget down.
Yep.
So we tried to make it as generic, and our idea was to use these references to exhibits, which are all through the document, to be our way to make the document flexible. Having said that, I have no objection to having, because there are things that happen in the park, like we thought we would have patrols insecurity. You know, we thought at the time when the park was going, there was a lot of vandalism going in town and people were very nervous, and there were going to be bike patrols, you know, daily, weekly, and that just never happened. And then, you know, the putting the wood chips, the way we thought the park was going to be maintained, and I don't think we ever anticipated the invasives to be, or that we might lose all our ash trees, or, you know, so I'm thinking, you know,
Pick your year, make it 10 years of that. But you're going to change the personnel on the committee too, and someone's going to come in with new ideas. You know, there's more IT work, just keeping it as a document, a living document, so.
yeah, so I'm happy to, I think we would probably all agree that we would have no problem adding a line into the overview of the park section or the management structure. Probably the management structure would be the best place to put that.
How would you anticipate that your fat folder there is going to accommodate some of those changes that you just mentioned? You said that was where your flexibility was in the exhibits.
Well, for example,
the security one, if you were going to say, well, okay, we need security all of a sudden, does one of your exhibits say, well, yeah, you should be able to do that?
Yeah, well, I can't tell you exactly which exhibit, but what, like for example, how the trails are maintained is now an exhibit. So Exhibit 8 outlines how the trails right now today are maintained. So when you, as the select board, go in to put out a mowing contract, say something comes up and there's a new
magic mower that
magic mower
12 feet wide, then you can just change your exhibit?
We could change our exhibit to reflect that, or that, you know, one of the things that we have in here is under, which is a section that's been approved already, but maintaining the forest now. Like when they put in the original hedgerow management section, it had how to dig a tree and plant a tree in it. That's now an exhibit. It's not in the management plan. It's a part of an exhibit. So we felt like we sort of pulled out those things and made them into, is that answering your question a little bit?
I'm getting at, maybe you want a hard date every 10 years.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Or as needed.
Right, but the exhibit shouldn't be just voluntarily randomly just changed either. I mean, they should be approved with the plan, so, although your plan can be generic, it would be nice to come in every 5 years, put a maximum of 5 years on it, just so that you could update exhibits and update the plan.
You want to be able to change the exhibits if needed. I mean, invasive popped up. Something might show up 2 years from now that we have no idea what it is.
One of the discussions we had exactly to that was the management practices for, like, when the emerald ash borer first came out, the management practice was to cut every single ash tree down. Like in Massachusetts, they cut every ash tree down. Well, that's not the management standard anymore, because in that time they've now come up with, it's very expensive right now, but an injection. So we put in the management plan or most current practice in the tree managing diseases. But I think in this under the management structure section, which is on page 3B, it would.
There is a sentence there that talks about the responsibility of the park oversight committee to revise and interpret the management plan. It doesn't say every 5 years or every 10 years, but I think what we found is that through working at the park, we're constantly doing research and trying to figure out the best way to manage the park, and over time you find that it's not really that you look back at the management plan and feel that it really needs to be updated because of the changes that have happened over the years. So whether it's necessary to put a certain length of time or just assume that the park committee would do that, it seems to be sort of I think already we've thought of some potential areas to research in the future to, which might mean some changes of certain sections, but.
It says
So-
circumstances warrant, which kind of covers.
Yeah,
that's what
so
I was
you
asking.
could, but we could add in there if you wanted, it is an approved section, so we could have to
We're
make
going to have an
them.
overriding approval, I think.
Right, so, but you could add a sentence in there, it is recommended that the plan be reviewed every 5 years and adapted appropriately. Or every 10 years, whatever.
I don't think there needs to be a hard date.
You don't?
I think that just,
Okay.
in some cases, chains you down to having to do a bunch of work that you might not have people to do.
Believe me, it's a bunch of work, writing one of these plans.
Where is this, who's the keeper? You're the keeper of the document? Do we post this on our website?
It's
or-
on the website already.
Okay.
But it could, I mean, I'm assuming that if you wanted to put it on the town website, it would refer to the.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Town website.
It's on we're under
Charlotte Planning.
the Charlotte Park and
Charlotte Park and
Wildlife
Wildlife.
Refuge is on the town website.
Okay.
So you could.
That's fine.
So as long as it's linkable from the Charlotte website, that's fine.
Right. Yeah, it's part of that
Yeah, that's-
website. It's just a
that's
subcategory
great.
within it, right? Am I saying that right?
And we could put together a complete copy if anybody wants to actually look at a copy with all these.
A paper copy, we'll have one here too. So the table of contents did change a little. If you want to just quickly go over that.
Jesse, can I just ask a quick
Yeah,
question?
of course you can.
You refer to the management structure, and so the second paragraph talks about the committee members, and I just wondered if that's still accurate. Are these, oops, sorry. Representative of the Select Board, tree warden, a park neighbor, a local equestrian trail rider, member of the Conservation Commission and Trails Committee, and the Divinity Fund shall have the right to appoint a representative. Is that still accurate?
Yeah. Right now, yes. I mean, we're loose in some of them. I think that's the wording to the extent feasible when we were getting it approved. That you guys wanted us to add the select board shall determine the number of oversight committee members and their length of service, because at that time we had this section approved, you were deciding that committee members should have, am I ringing any bells for
You
you?
mean length of time per
Yeah,
appointment, you mean?
They're
yeah.
lifetime appointments, aren't they?
Right now, they've been that way, but I think at that time you were going through committees when we had this approved.
So you don't have, all the other committees have 2 years, 4 years, whatever. You guys are kind of silent on that.
Right, but that's because it was undetermined when we did it, which is why we put the sentence, the select board shall determine the number of oversight committee members and their length of service. That gave you guys the flexibility to come in and say, we're gonna make it 5 years or 2 years or whatever you wanted to do.
It seems that it would be just as easy to put it in here and make it,
Well, you could, but you've already approved this section, so you'd have to change something you've approved.
You know, one of the things we do with all these commissions, it's a quick interface, but when a term expires, the incumbent can be reappointed, et cetera. But we, the select board, face every committee, conservation, design review, et cetera, but we don't meet with you because there's no expiration date other than somebody joining, so.
Well, you can do that. You have the right to do that anytime you want. I don't think you need to change the wording. You can say right tonight that you want to make it 5 years and.
Well, you can have, so they expire at different times. In case someone just says, hey, I signed up for a 3-year term, and someone else has a 2-year term, and so then we put in term expires 2019, 2021, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think that's why the wording that we decided the wording when we were approving that section say that you as the select board determines that.
So we could do that, but.
I don't think we need to change the agreement. I think with this,
Right,
select board says we can do it, so just do it.
so.
Yeah, whenever you want,
Write
you
some
can do
numbers
it.
on there and call it done.
Yeah.
What should the term be?
Well, maybe this is a discussion that could
You guys can come back with a recommendation.
You will give us a recommendation?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
agree. Give us a
That way,
recommendation.
we have face-to-face with
Yeah.
each board
Yeah,
member.
that's
Okay.
fine. Yeah, no problem. Okay, so quickly, the only real big change of I didn't type out this because the basic change is that the old table of contents only had 4 sections listed on it. Okay? So the new table of contents has the page number of every thing, and we moved as I mentioned earlier, we moved parking area up. Otherwise, it's the same. We just listed them out. And then,
So why don't we, see if we can get more questions if there are any. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the entire Charlotte Park Wildlife Refuge
I'll
Management
make a
Plan?
motion to approve the Charlotte Park and Wildlife Management Refuge Plan, or Refuge Management Plan, as updated.
Of 2019. You've got a date.
Well, we got some approved dates, so is there a date on this document?
Well, you could get all those out and just make it approval this date.
Sure, we just date this document today's date?
Yeah, just put today's date on.
yeah,
And then all these.
we just put that so
several-
you would have a reference of
no,
what
okay.
what
But the final
happened when.
document will just have none of those dates and
No,
say
they'll all go away.
February
and-
25th.
Yeah.
Have you seconded that?
Yeah, I'll second that.
So now are there any comments?
I guess, not to kick a horse, but when will you be coming back with a recommendation for terms? It's
You
been
put us on the calendar, Dean, and we'll come back and tell you.
March 25th.
Okay, that works for me. Does that work for everybody
Just have
else?
staggered expirations, that's all we're asking.
Okay, fine with me.
And see what terms you
A
want,
lot
3
like
years, 2
Lake
years.
Plain said, a lot of them on our boards are 2 and 3 year terms. They could be 4 and 5 year terms, just that, so things.
Yeah, it's
terms
easier to
ex-
get off when
well,
you're
terms-
sick of it.
Well, terms expire at different times, that's all.
There's forever.
And you can, and if you get sick and tired, you don't have to reapply.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea.
Okay, any other comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Thank you for your extensive work, guys.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for giving
Thank
us
you
It's been a long
the
process.
time.
Thank you all for your work.
Wow, yes, it was quite an accomplishment. We'll be going home and having champagne.
Oh, good.
Sorry, guys.
Thank you.
And they thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
I really think you've been a great chairman and a great member of our board, and I'm sad to lose you. I can't speak for the rest of the
Thank you.
Appreciate it, your work.
Okay, food scraps. Abby.
You can have it.
I'll stay for food.
So I went and I spoke with Carrie, and I spoke with one farmer in town, and it was sort of suggested to me that it might be a really good idea to try to get a survey up and going for this whole issue that's coming up, whereby households need to divert their food scraps from the landfill in July 2020. So the reason to do a food scraps survey now is to give us lead time between now and next town meeting, to get some information, public input about preferred options for food scrap management, which are laid out in the survey, to gauge support for a potential town mediated option, like either having drop-offs in East and West Charlotte with potentially contracting with one hauler, or even looking into a consolidated curbside collection for organics, food scraps, and other materials only. So this would just give us feedback from people and give us time to think about next town meeting and whether there needs to be a question or an article or whatever the correct term is for that. And also for me, I would like to really identify people interested in helping get options off the ground. in town. So that's the intent behind the survey. And I tried to sort of embed
So you're going to
opening people's eyes about this. Yeah.
So you're going to do this more as a paper survey handout?
I will do much what I did last time, so it's a combination. There will be an online survey.
Oh, okay.
Which will be advertised in the papers. It will be posted, there'll be a link from the town website. I can write an article explaining it, but I would like to disseminate it starting on town meeting day, because I hope people show up to town meeting.
I think the contact information should be optional. Carrie expressed a concern about that.
It is optional. That's the way I structured it. On the paper form, it's optional. People don't have to sign that if they don't want to.
Okay.
I could say this is
You can
optional.
put the word
but-
optional there, maybe.
What? Put the word optional?
Optional, that way they know that their survey will
Okay.
get counted, even if they don't put their name down.
Yeah. I can write that in. And with the online survey, it doesn't require that they sign in to answer the survey.
Yeah, this was just after number 7. It says sharing contact information.
Yeah, I thought please share was sort of polite, but I will add optional, yeah, to make it more explicit. Any other
I don't know how you'd ever have
suggestions?
one hauler without having, it's probably not a discussion for this, but one hauler and allow free market, through the town. I mean, we've got about 4 or 5 haulers coming through town, and obviously they're on the same roads, these big trucks, but
Right.
different subject.
Chip in that I don't think she's saying that would stop. I think she's saying just for the food scraps would be one
Yeah.
hauler.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was pushback a while ago looking at consolidated hauling, even though it would save everyone about 30% off of all of their fees. If the town did that, like the town of Westford has done for 30 years very happily. But there's pushback from people, maybe even a very minority of people, but but this would be, it's a little different with the organics because first of all, there are fewer people offering that service. And I think it's most likely if there was interest from survey takers or people in town that it would be a drop-off situation like we talked about the last time I was here. Because I don't really think it's cost effective for either households or haulers to do the curbside collection. And the only way that it would be, according to what CSWD says and national studies say, the way to get the price down is to have density in the collection, and you would just really want one hauler. And there would be a bid process. So, but it wouldn't, yeah, it would not, anyway. There's a lot more conversation that would need to have about the financial structure of this, but I think the first step is to hear what people have to say.
I have a question, I think.
Yeah.
If you have a drop-off site, how do you keep the critters away?
Well, we have a drop-off site at school with 8 toters, so this would be, it could be rolled out on like a Saturday for a couple of hours and be monitored. You can get certain lids on containers. You can have some like CSWD offers a waste reduction grant for up to $5,000 where a fenced off area could be constructed. I mean, there are different strategies. But at school, we don't have critters. And we have 8, currently we have 8 food scrap toters just outside school behind the cafeteria.
No problem.
We have not had any problem in 8 years.
And odor? No?
Odors, there are paper towels put on top, and you can have, biofilter materials like wood shavings that people could be instructed to pour on top of their food scraps when they put it in. But it would be a weekly collection. So it's really not as, people conjure up a lot of fears about this, and it's good to think about. It needs some management, but it's really been proven to work in lots of places. Yeah.
Should this be a motion?
Yeah, I think Abby just asked, because at the beginning it does say, the select board, she wanted your blessing.
Yeah, I wanted your blessings.
So is there a motion to approve the release of the survey?
Motion to approve the release of the What About Your Kitchen Food Scraps survey.
I'll second that.
And then,
That can be distributed at town meeting.
right, we distribute and so forth in accordance with the plan that you've got here.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions on this? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another comment, or we're good?
Well, it's only about wood ashes. If wood ash could be put in the containers, is that what you meant?
Yeah, or have a separate container for wood ash.
I mean, it could, it's an organic material, so it could go in a container, yeah. As long as it wasn't live.
Yeah.
Pile of wood ash with my lawnmower.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be live and compost.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
And you know what Jesse said.
Thank you. Your favorite topic? Salt.
Favorite time of year.
Okay, you have more happy
Look at the
camp-
crowd.
Yeah, surprising a lot more people here.
Not many people here because the way it was put in the,
What did we say?
just said road commissioner, didn't say anything else.
So have you been getting phone calls?
Well, yeah, I mean, this time of year, we get a lot of phone calls, and the main thing is that I think a lot of people, new people have moved into town and they don't really know what we do, and they leave Charlotte and whichever way they go, they come onto Bear Roads pretty quick. So anyway, that's my biggest complaint that I get is this time of year or in the winter time of that. So I was wondering, I'd asked Dean, if there was a way that we could get it to vote, just to see how the townspeople feel about,
What's your mix right now?
For the
13?
blacktop, we're 25.75 for the blacktop.
Yeah.
But it's, the thing is that, there's a lot of people in town just think, oh, it's just a matter of saying, oh, we're gonna go and use more salt. Well, then we're gonna end up to be like Shelburne, Heinsberg, or Ferrisburg. Well, what you gotta realize is all those towns are not using just salt. Shelburne uses calcium chloride, which will work much colder and work faster, of course. Heinsberg is using the green salt there, Clear Lane, which works in cold and works faster. And Ferrisburg, I think, is using...
Are they mixes or are they straight?
They mix it.
So it's a sand?
It comes mixed. No, it's not a sand, it's a salt. It's a salt. Now, like Shelburne, for instance, I don't know if you've ever seen on the back of their trucks, hung on the tailgates, they have these plastic poly tanks.
So it's a brine.
They have calcium chloride in them. Kind of like the state was doing with their salt brine, but Shelburne uses like calcium chloride. And like Ferrisburg, I think they use regular salt, but in their new shed they mix some stuff, it's a beer byproduct, it's Ice Be Gone. They mix that with their salt, so it looks brown when it comes out, which works at a much colder temperature than regular salt. So, and we're still way back just using, sand with a little bit of salt, so, which doesn't really bother me. It's just, I'd like to get it out to see what people thought. We did it back in 2001. It was put on the ballot for town meeting, to see, and I'm not sure of the count, but I think it was something like 20 to 25 people more wanted salt at that point. But it was a non-binding. So at the next select board meeting, after town meeting, the only ones that showed up here, with exception of, I think, Shirley Bean, was all the ones that were against salt. So the select board said, seeing it was so close, they were gonna leave it the way it was. So that was, 18 years ago or so now.
I mean, do you have a recommendation? Would you rather be doing a brine or a
Well, I don't know
liquid,
about
or-
I don't know about a brine or that, but I think we should be using more salt. I mean, I just say it as safety. It's, I know salt's expensive, but we put a mountain of sand down there and it ends up in the ditches, you know what I mean, every year. So, I think there's a reason why all the towns around us are using salt. I'm not saying that I want to go to directly salt, but I think, I'd like to see what the voters think instead of me just making the decision, because I know there's a lot of them that are on both sides. So,
I mean,
you guys gave me basically the permission to use it at my discretion. But I'd like to see what the voters in general think. And I didn't know if there's a way to get it on, I know you can't get it on the ballot, but,
Well, you could put it as an advisory thing at the end of the meeting.
I mean, just to get an idea of what, what the townspeople,
Have a floor vote.
we can have it called other business. I think there's a category of other business, isn't there? But we need recommendation,
The
just to
only
say,
problem-
what do you want? You're gonna get all over the
You gotta hang
line.
a dollar sign on it,
well,
too.
you see, the thing is that would be the other thing. If we jump to using a lot more salt, we do not have the storage
Well, yeah,
to
I read that.
do that. So,
You need to tell people, like, okay, we're gonna spend blank amount more per year for salt and blank to have a salt shed to store it.
well, yeah, we'd either have to, depending on how much we wanted to use, either maybe put a little bit of addition. I don't know if we can even add on to that because of it's like on Old Route 7, right? So it's just the right of way.
I think you need to,
But anyway, we would need a place.
ballpark a number, so I mean, that seems to motivates people, is what does it cost?
What it would cost for a transition, I guess, from what
Yeah.
we've got to what we would expect, and what the cost would be to make a building that would accommodate the salt that's necessary.
Would you go like a 50-50 mix, or would you
Well,
go?
we could do that, yeah. I think it's, I said, I'd like to see it go to the voters to see what they think. I mean, I don't think that they would like, I don't know which way it would be, which would be more, but I don't know if they'd want to go straight salt. If they did, that's fine with me, but.
Okay, some hands back here, go ahead.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Well, I'd like to know how many tons of salt we're using every year and what it would
We're using about-
increase to.
Right now, we're using about 400 tons.
Of salt, so the 25% represents 400 tons of salt.
Yeah, well, the 25% is just in what we call our hot mix for the blacktop. That
Yeah.
doesn't count the pile that sets down there, doesn't have much salt in it. Enough to try to keep it from freezing, but with the rains we had last fall, it's froze about 2 to 3 feet thick on the outside shell.
That's in Boulder.
Yeah, because of the
So-
rain washes it
I
down.
read this study that was done from Paul Smith's college in the Adirondacks, and they talked about, after 1980, they had this clear road policy because of the Olympics in 1980, and they have just continued it. And tons and tons and tons of salt have gone on the roads and has affected the waterways, the streams and lakes near roads. The salt jumps off the road or gets washed off, and it is affecting fish life. So I think people should know something about that. That it's not a choice without consequences.
No, I hear you, but, I say the thing is that we can't just, a lot of people say, oh, just put more salt in. Well,
Right, and
we
that's
can't, we can do that, but the thing is that We get it from Barrett's, we're under the, you know, we go in under bid with all the other towns and the state and everybody else. But this time of year, if I call today for salt, 2 to 3 weeks before I see the load. So if you don't have, depending on when the storms come, you know, if you only get 1 a week, then you're probably fine. But if you get 2 or 3, or you get ice, it can take a lot more. So I haven't wanted to increase the salt much because we don't have a lot of storage.
Abby, you had a comment?
I think I was here the last time, this was not that long ago this was talked about.
We talked about it 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, I believe the state has, you know, best management practices for this with both safety and environmental considerations taken into account. But I agree with Susan and probably with Junior that I would want people to know kind of what, you know, what all the sides of the issue are. So, not just the finances and the storage, but that other stuff too.
I think people would want to see that, and I don't think it's going to be a quick and dirty vote.
No.
I think it needs to be, it's going to have to be a presentation of the upside and the downside, and you've got to attach a dollar sign to it.
So it would take some time to prepare something.
I think it would. I think it'd be a lot of work, and
maybe when the town plan's up there, maybe that could be another topic. You know, when we vote on the town plan,
could be, yeah.
and then have that as a topic.
If we get the work done in time.
I mean, that could be 6 months from now, though. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, I don't think it's just, I mean, Junior could give the dollar information. Somebody else is going to have to come up with some of the environmental stuff.
Yeah, I don't have a clue about that.
It's going to have to be a collection of people working on it. So it's be a town salt committee.
Yeah. Well, I just didn't want it, you know, to go to vote and just say, it's as simple as saying, do we want more salt or do we want to stay with just sand, when there's really a bigger picture than just that.
I'd just say get good tires and learn how to drive and call it quits.
Well, I would agree with you, but, you know, I see all kinds of tires out there, and there's people that say, I tell them, you know, maybe you should get snow tires, and they said, well, these are the best all seasons you can buy. They're 80,000 mile tires, you know, and I said, yeah, you know the problem with that? The rubber compound's so hard you can't get no traction.
But they're 10 years old.
But,
So, this has been a front porch forum. Have you gotten in the last month 10 calls, 100 calls on this issue, or just a couple?
you mean calls personally?
Yeah, just saying you're the road commissioner and I want more.
Just, you know, I would say we haven't gotten a lot of calls, you know. I wouldn't say 10, 15 at the most. Yeah.
Yeah, just to put more dirt for
Put more dirt outside
public
the
to
gate,
use.
yeah. Well, there's a lot of people taking dirt out there, you know. I don't know if you've seen, like other towns, they've been putting chain link fences around them and making it so they can only walk in with 5-gallon pails. Because the landscapers back right up with their spreaders and shovel it right in, and then they take it, and I don't know if they're charging the people to sand their driveways or if they're just, you know, but.
I got a front loader, I could use it.
Well, there's front loaders that come there too, you know, and take it by the bucket, and then they don't have to shovel it on.
So, of our surrounding communities, do we use the least amount of salt?
Oh, definitely, yes.
We're the least.
Yeah.
And the way I read the front porch forum, Shelburne has clear roads because they're
using salt and they're using calcium chloride. You know, Ferrisburg has bare roads. Heinsberg has bare roads, but they're not just using clear salt, you know, so it's like the front porch forum people, you know, think that they know it all, but they don't really know what the other towns are using.
The other towns don't always have clear roads either, so I've seen plenty of shoulder roads not clear.
Oh, definitely, I'll agree with you, yes. But I mean, in the majority of the time, when the temperature is right, their roads are clearer a lot faster than ours. Ours clean up, a lot of it is with Mother Nature. It's been, you know, it gets warm. Sometimes it might be a day or two after the storm. And there's times when it's super cold that even the stuff they're using doesn't clear up, and then we're better off with the sand.
Thinking from being one of the people that goes on the truck, that I think we've been to one incident where we were looking for a car that was reported slid off the road as a result of slippery roads.
Yeah, we don't have, I mean, we have cars off the road, and some of it is, it's not that the road was actually slippery, it's like they might be pulling over to make a phone call or take a call, and they just get over where the wing is kind of plowed out a little bit further, and they just drop a tire off, and they're, you know, and they're stuck.
It would probably be just as advantageous to more salt as just an explanation of the road doesn't get wider in the winter. It's still only 2-lane ride. But
So, is there any action that the select board wants to take on this subject?
I think any action's going to be a lot of work. I think our road commissioner's doing a good job.
And it's fine with me.
I mean, obviously, the public could bring it up at town meeting, and
that's what a town meeting's for.
And okay. So if the town wanted more salt, if let's say the town brings it up, I mean, when you're talking about a shed, I mean, it's just for $20,000, could you have a shed that would give you salt in one pile and your mixture in the other, or do you buy it mixed? Do you buy it mixed when you?
No.
So there's 25, 75.
No, we buy it just straight sand, and then we mix it.
So if you're just, somebody said, Doug, I know we want salt, and there's a lot of emotion, yet we need to have cover for it, otherwise it just dissolves. I mean, what number do we say would give you a shed that?
Well, first of all, you'd probably, I mean, I don't know if you could put an addition on that shed there because of the land. I mean, I think it's sitting on the right of way of Old Route 7, so it's just 66 feet.
This is something that our salt committee would have to figure out. They'd have to go
So
out and say where you could put it.
If we don't answer the question, we won't have a vote, that's true.
Is this going to be something with just concrete blocks and a vinyl cover that lasts 15 years? Or do we want a wood structure that's going to last 30 years? And which one of them cost? I mean, this is a big can of worms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Junior. Roads are good? We don't drive fast?
I mean, you know, I think the roads are good, and most of the people, you know, that have been around here know how Charlotte roads are, and they take it easy. And a lot of times, I think Charlotte roads are better than the others, because the good thing is there's usually sand left on them. Maybe not on the straightaways where people go fast because they whip it off, but like at intersections and stuff, so people can get started and whatnot. But, you know, there's just the few people that wonder, well, why, you know? Why is it, anywhere I go, I cross the line and it's there.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Notice of vacancies, anything we do with that? It's just an awareness for us?
Yeah, it's awareness. Yeah. I'll post it.
The only thing I was gonna suggest is possibly putting in an alternate for the zoning board.
I don't know that that's allowed by statute. I think
it is.
The statute allows an alternate for the zoning board. Yes.
It says the municipal legislative body may appoint alternatives to a planning commission, a board of adjustment, or a developmental review board for a term to be determined by the legislative body.
Okay, that's, I wasn't aware of that language. So that would be a new position.
Yes.
And
it'd be an alternative for, we have, at this time, we have a lot of people that are that are on trips and
Right.
other things and make it difficult. And if there is a time where a board member has to recuse himself, then an alternate could come in, so we have a full board.
So would it be the same term as the?
It doesn't have to be. I mean, the zoning board terms are 3 years.
Yeah.
It could be a 2-year term, just as an alternate. I mean, it could be a 1-year term. It doesn't really matter. I'm just suggesting that there's a possibility to have an alternate for the zoning board.
So actually, I think the positions are laid out in the land use regulations of what the boards are composed of.
Right.
So I'm wondering if that needs to be
Well,
an amendment.
Our zoning bylaws have to conform to the state statute. And if the state statute allows you to,
It allows, but right now it just designates the 5 members, right?
so it'd be something that we'd have to do in our zoning bylaws.
I think it would.
Because you'd still only have a 5-member board realistically.
I can check with the League of Cities and Towns.
Yeah, you can,
Okay.
just for a simple, and it's nothing we have to do now, it's
Right.
just, it's just a suggestion in the future.
Yep.
Are there any elected positions that aren't filled?
Like fence viewer, there's a couple.
Well, fence viewers
People haven't,
Signed up for?
yeah, I think there's a couple.
Yeah.
Is there an empty auditor one coming up, or?
Well, there is there will be a vacancy as of March 5th. Currently it's filled, but it will be vacant March 5th.
So, I mean, we know at this point how many elected spots are empty.
Vacant right here. So nobody filled out an application for auditor.
Okay.
Should I add that to the list?
Sure.
Grand juror and trustee of public funds, vacant. Add it to the list of available, okay.
Because, I mean, that's something we do, or we can do, is appoint people to fill those positions.
Right.
Yeah, it's maybe good to advertise them too. After town meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, you could always get write-in votes, say to somebody, a couple people had auditor petitions, but then they didn't finish them.
Yeah, I tend to think probably should advertise those after town meeting in case someone writes in.
Yeah.
How many does it take for a write-in?
I think it's 30.
30.
25 or 30, it's,
It's the same number you probably need for the signatures.
I think that's right, yep.
So, should be about the same.
Okay. Select board schedule for March?
So I just wanted to check, the second and fourth Mondays, town meeting, well, the informational hearing is on Monday, the 4th at 6:30. And then town meeting is the 5th at 9:00 a.m. And you need to set what the budget will be for the vote in April. So we have in the past met on the 7th, Thursday, to do organizational work, like, select chair and then also approve the budget for the vote in April. So I'm wondering if you want to hold a meeting in April at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock or something like
You
that.
said the informational hearing was at 6:30 on Monday, the 4th?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on the bottom of your agenda.
Oh, okay.
That way, on the 11th, which is the first regular meeting, you've gotten all the preamble out of the way, and there's several items that you can jump right into. So, does that sound okay?
Yeah, that gives us the time frame we need to warn it for
Yep.
the April meeting. So,
Okay,
that sounds fine.
so as you've posted it here, and then you also said the 25th in discussion, so
Right,
you'll have one March 25th.
yep.
Okay.
I'm not sure you can approve. I don't know, Frank, can you vote on that, or is that,
I can.
okay?
It's not in my name.
Okay.
But, I mean, I probably should, I would recommend that you do it next meeting.
Okay.
Because I don't think there's no,
Not pressing.
it's not pressing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would recommend you do it next meeting. Thank you.
Okay. We're into the minutes. So motion to approve the minutes of February 11th as may be amended.
That sounds like a wonderful idea.
Okay.
I'll move that.
Oh, we didn't do, okay, we got that on, okay. We have one other thing we haven't done yet. The appeal. Okay, minutes of February 11th. That was seconded, Frank?
Yes.
Okay. I went through them, I didn't see any issues, actually. There are no empty times or dates or anything. Okay, all in favor of the motion, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So we have the appeal, the zoning board decision. That was an adjustment to the agenda, Dean?
Right,
Oh, you handed that out, didn't you?
you know, the usual process is the court, may eventually turn back to the town for mediation, but at least initially, they ask whether the town wants to enter an appearance, which is sending our attorney. That, procedure takes minimal time, 5 minutes. A letter to the court just saying the town attorney is representing the town.
Is that decision document, is that something I missed in the mailbox? I didn't go over there.
I think you handed it out, or did you hand it out tonight?
I don't think I did. I don't know whether Aaron did or not. I can ask.
No, I was asking about it today. You gave me one, but that was it.
Yeah, it's fair.
Swimming pool, in-road.
Okay.
Are you usually getting decisions or not? Has that been not happening?
What was your question?
I might not have been asking him to provide decisions. Have you been getting them or not?
This is actually the first one I've read.
Okay. It might be the first one there's been in a while. Is that true for a zoning board?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a couple, but.
Been hearings,
The last
but
one was
not-
that cats one, I think, or what used to be.
Oh, affectionately cats?
Yeah, it's
That
like
was
2 years
a while
ago.
ago, yeah.
Yeah, it was,
So we had that one, yeah.
yeah.
So what's your opinion, Frank?
It's just normal procedure. They,
To go ahead and...
they have filed it with the court, so, I mean, it's just normal procedure. We
Show
have our
up.
appearance.
Yep.
We are, in the process, and we haven't decided on it. We haven't had a meeting yet, but, they're asking for, reconsideration.
Does that go before you go to an appeal?
It's gonna come, so basically they're running them parallel
I see.
at this time because we haven't got around to having a meeting to see if we were going to go with reconsideration or not. So, like I said, this is just normal, from what was said.
So why don't we make a motion to
Make a
Have an
motion to
appearance.
make an appearance
Yep.
regarding the, what is it?
Got a number on it, probably.
CBA 18-207-VA, Carrera variance request. CBA 18-207-VA.
You second it?
Yes.
Any other comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Okay. Any select board updates?
I don't know if everyone got a copy of the, this workshop. It's happening Wednesday, all day, March 27th. It's economic development in Burke. I don't know if anyone, I think Carrie had.
Carrie said she wanted to go.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyone else? Okay.
I gotta tell you, Lane, your last meeting's going out with a whisper.
Oh, yeah. I get to go home and have my
Doesn't
ice
get any better, huh?
Get to have my ice cream.
It's not even a football game or anything. That's cool.
So I talked to the library folks today. They're going to have a pitch during Article 3. And then Fire and Rescue is going to have a pitch during Article 3. The screen will be down. And then I'll just talk about what we handed out last week, the variance to our budget, and I'll make reference to the correction. And mine will be short and nothing formal. So we'll be at the 6:30 for the hearing, and then, is that what we call it? Oh, it's called the public information hearing, and then the town meeting at 9.
And that's for the Australian ballot thing, right?
Yep.
And is this the last year? Well, it's the last,
Well, it's the last year of the April vote. Well, no,
it's the last year of the
No,
charter,
no,
but the,
one more
year.
was one more vote after this April. But the sunset will be initiated, but there'll still be one more vote.
Right.
yes.
Right.
So next year we'll have one more vote, but the sunset, if we don't re-up it this coming year, it disappears.
I mean, all the feedback I get, letting it sunset seems like the right thing to do.
I hear there's nothing but confusion usually.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, is there any other business to be brought before the board? And here are the warrants. Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Thank you, Lane, for many
Thank you very
years.
much.
Thank you.